Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Town Hall with the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston. I'm Elise Hand, and I'll be your moderator this evening. And for those who are joining us for the first time, welcome, and just a few things to go over before we start. Earlier this evening, several Nova Scotians received an invitation to join our conversation by phone, and those who have chosen to participate will have an opportunity to ask a question to the Premier directly tonight. If you are participating by phone and you would like to ask a question to Premier Tim Houston, please hit *3 to be added to the queue. And we are broadcasting live tonight on the Nova Scotia Government Facebook page and our Nova Scotia Government YouTube channel. And everyone watching this evening will also have the opportunity to participate. If you are watching us online, you can email your questions to nstownhall@novascotia.ca. That's nstownhall@novascotia.ca. All right, let's get things started. For those on the phones, now is the time to hit *3 if you have a question for the Premier. And before we get to those questions, Premier, I'll start it off by turning it over to you.
Okay, thanks so much. Welcome, everyone. Premier Tim Houston here, ready to chat about whatever is on your mind. If you'd like to ask me a question tonight, press *3 and get in the queue to have a little chat. Look forward to it. Yesterday, our government tabled Budget 2026. That budget is entitled Defending Nova Scotia, Planning for the Long Term. This budget obviously comes at a time when Trump's tariffs and the trade war and the global economic uncertainty, it's impacting families, it's impacting businesses, and it's impacting government revenues as well. There's no question about that. It definitely has resulted in our government having to make some difficult decisions that are necessary to protect Nova Scotia's financial position, to protect core services like healthcare and education and housing, and difficult decisions to protect people from seeing tax hikes. As a result, a number of reductions have had to take place or will take place in the public service, and also to some programs like community grants. I know community organizations are finding out about some of the changes to their funding and some of the changes to their grants today. These are difficult times. They're difficult decisions for us, but they're difficult times and difficult to hear for people as well. So we know that these decisions affect people, affect their families personally, but they're not personal decisions. As Premier, I feel for all those who have been impacted, and I carry this with me as your Premier. As a government, we do what we can. And we often do a little bit more than we can, which is why we see deficits, and we still have a significant deficit even with this budget. The spending is up year over year, but even still, there is just some need for some changes and some cuts as we continue to focus on the core services that we all rely on. But we also need to continue to making progress on rebuilding our healthcare system. We've had some progress there. There's 570 net new doctors in this province compared to 2021 when we first formed government. We have the lowest surgical wait list since 2015. Every single month, there's an additional 80,000 primary care appointments every month, 80,000 new appointments. And we've seen a very significant drop in the people waiting for attachment to primary care. So we know that there's progress there. We see the progress in healthcare. We see some progress in housing as well. There's more affordable units now. We have over 3,000 more affordable housing units since we formed government just 4 years ago. So we're trying to streamline approvals, drive up housing starts, and we've seen the vacancy rate start to climb up. It's doubled. So these are good things. They're good indications. We've also been able to continue with last year's tax cuts, including reducing the HST, indexing tax brackets, and increasing the basic personal exemption. These tax savings have put money back in the pockets of families, an average of $1,400 per year per family back in their pockets, money that they can use to help pay for their expenses. So we won't apologize for making these investments in Nova Scotians, but we know that they're on the other side of that. To hold the line on spending, we had to make some tough decisions. So I'm looking forward to having a discussion tonight. Press *3 to get in the queue to ask your question. But there's a lot to be proud of, but there's certainly some concerns as well that we have to work through this time. But looking forward to chatting. Press star 3 if you'd like to chat, and look forward to having a discussion tonight.
Okay, thanks so much, Premier. And again, star 3, and you'll be added to the queue if you do have a question for Premier Houston. We're going to start with an email question, Premier, from Josh, who asks, why did the government fire the wildlife branch of the Natural Resources Department? I worry this is going to mean wildlife destruction across Nova Scotia.
Hi, Josh. Thank you for this. Important question, and certainly, I guess what I'd start off and saying, like, we all care about this province. We care about the air we breathe. We care about the water we drink. We all care about our wildlife, and that's part of who we are as Nova Scotians, is enjoying the outside, so outdoors, and all that goes with that. So we all, like, that's the starting point. We care about that. There are some changes to DNR, mostly some moving some people around. Some of the wildlife technicians and biologists and other staff are in a regional services branch office. So we're just looking at how we organize that department. But we certainly didn't fire everyone. We didn't gut the department. We didn't get rid of the whole department. We just had to do some restructuring, and there will be some job losses there, but certainly we haven't got rid of the whole department. But thank you for that question, Josh.
Okay, thanks so much, Premier. And another question here from Anne. Anne wants to know, are you cutting healthcare in this budget? There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to have more doctors brought to the province to cut down on the wait list. So that's a question from Anne, Premier.
Hi, Anne. Thank you for this question. We're absolutely committed to continuing to improve healthcare, make sure Nova Scotians have access to the care they need. There's more doctors in the province now than there was last year and the year before that. Like, there's more, and across healthcare professionals, I think we're seeing vacancies filled. But doctors specifically, I mean, opening up the medical school at Cape Breton University, there's people training. We announced that school in 2023. Right now, there's people training to be doctors there to provide care in Nova Scotia. The PACE program, the Physicians Assessment and Clinical Evaluation Program, this is for foreign trained doctors. They can come here and we can assess their skills in a pretty quick period of time. That is working. That's effective. Other provinces are looking at it and saying, what are you doing there, and can we participate in that? So these are positive things. So frontline healthcare, we continue to invest in frontline healthcare. We'll continue to invest in the healthcare infrastructure. We'll look for efficiencies in some of the administration of healthcare, some of the purchasing, some of the other aspects of administration, to make sure that the money goes to front lines, to caring for Nova Scotians. But there's some real bright spots, some incredible bright spots. You might have read just this week over at Dartmouth General, they had an incredible day, 8 hip surgeries in one day. That's a record for Atlantic Canada. That's because working with healthcare professionals, some members of the team said, hey, if we do this a little different, if we change this process, then we can be more efficient and get more care. So listening to those healthcare professionals, supporting them when they make changes, and you start to see progress. So we know, Anne, that there's work to be done, and we will continue to focus on doing that work. At the same time, we've had some pretty remarkable progress that we can also be proud of. But we'll continue to do the work. I appreciate the question, Anne.
Thanks so much, Anne. And a reminder for those who are just tuning in, if you would like to ask a question to the Premier, hit star 3 on your phone and you will be put in a queue to speak with him. We'll be online for the next 45 to 50 minutes. Next question comes from Elizabeth, Premier, and Elizabeth is on the phone. She's from Halifax. She has a question about support for Nova Scotia students. So you can go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Did we lose you?
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
So my question was, I understand you were going to send $5 million to Lebanon to help with the recruiting of medical doctors. And our medical students here are struggling to get into programs, even with high GPAs, to stay in Nova Scotia, but can't seem to get any placement.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. This has been a concern for sure. I share the concern. Many Nova Scotians have raised this. They talk about somebody that they know that's a pretty remarkable student and community leader and have trouble getting into medical school. We've been trying to work with Dalhousie on that, Dalhousie Medical School, to kind of recognize that it's great to train doctors that go all over the world and talk about how great Dalhousie Medical School is, but we want doctors that want to be in Nova Scotia and stay here too. So this has been an ongoing discussion, and part of our answer to that was the Cape Breton University Medical School, the CBU Medical School that I mentioned. So that the focus of that school, and I believe there are 30 students in that, in that cohort right now, but the focus of that school is on Nova Scotians. It's slanted towards Nova Scotian students, people who grew up in Nova Scotia, rural Nova Scotia in many cases, who want to be in Nova Scotia, want to stay here in Nova Scotia. So I know I'm looking forward to getting down to the CBU campus and talking to some of the students there. But I just know from talking to a couple of family members, running into them on the street or whatever, them telling me how happy they are that their loved one or their neighbor, or whatever the case may be, was able to get into medical school here. And I actually remember, Elizabeth, the day that we announced back in 2023 that we're gonna do this, we're gonna create this medical school here. I remember leaving the stage, and there was a young advanced care paramedic who was there, and she told me, I'm going to go to medical school. And I said, that's incredible. Was that always your dream? And she said, it was always my dream, but I didn't think I'd be able to. But now there's one here at home. I think I'm going to be able to fulfill my dream. So I agree with you on making sure that there are opportunities for Nova Scotia students, and we will continue to focus on that. We will also, we can educate doctors here. That's part of the solution. But in the shorter term, and the other part of the solution is recruiting doctors to move here, and that's what the PACE clinic is about. That's what some of the other recruiting is about. But we need doctors here. We've done very well. Our attachment rate of Nova Scotians attached to a primary care is 93% right now. 93% of Nova Scotians. I want to get that to 100, but 93% is also pretty remarkable. One of our neighboring provinces just announced they're at like 75. And I think nationally 80 would be considered a success, but in Nova Scotia we're at 93. But we'll continue to do the work, and we'll continue to make sure that there are opportunities here in Nova Scotia. But I really appreciate that important question, Elizabeth.
Thanks again, Elizabeth. Next, Premier, we're going to Heather, and Heather has a question on taxing hybrid vehicles. Heather, go ahead.
Hi. I'm a little bit leery about this new tax on the electric vehicles and the hybrids. We all bought these vehicles at an extra cost that we assumed was going to keep the roads and whatever. Like, it was, my personal one is a hybrid, and it was $5,000 over the cost of the same vehicle in a gas option. Now we're going to be taxed every 2 years on this vehicle?
Thank you, Heather, for that. Nobody likes new taxes, that's for sure. And certainly I mentioned that we've been able to, when we're faced with the deficit that we're faced with, $1.2 billion in the budget year, starting out now. Also $1.2 billion in the year just ending. So when we're faced with this budget deficits, we have a couple choices, right? We can raise personal income taxes. We're seeing that happen in other provinces right now. We've seen that happen in Nova Scotia before. We don't want to do that. We've continued on with the tax cuts that are keeping money in the pockets of Nova Scotians, almost $1,400 per household. We could raise fees. I remember a prior government here in Nova Scotia not that long ago raised 1,400 different fees, everything you could think of, marriage license, they raised them all. We haven't raised fees across the board. So I think that's a couple areas where we were able to kind of hold the line. On the EVs and hybrids, I guess we just kind of approach this from more of a I would say an overall fairness thing. We're investing significant amount in our capital budget. That's roads, bridges, hospitals, schools. But when you think about the wear and tear on roads, that's funded through a gas tax. That's funded through different mechanisms. But the obviously the EVs don't have a gas tax, so they're using the roads, but they're not contributing to the maintenance of the roads. It was kind of the discussion we had. And in most cases, the EVs and the hybrids are a much heavier vehicle, could be twice as heavy as some of the traditional gas vehicles. So there's a wear and tear element there. We tried to look at it as much as we wanted to hold the line on no tax increases, no fee increases. This is one that we just kind of looked at and said, there's an element there where we need to have people, contributing fairly across society to the use of the roads. So I believe it's for a EV $500 every 2 years on the registration, and on the hybrid $250 every 2 years. So I could double check the math, but order of magnitude, it's something like that. But we don't like higher taxes, we don't like higher fees, but at the same time, we're just trying to balance a lot of things. So I'm sorry you kind of got caught in that one, and some other owners did. But when we looked at it, it really has to do with just making sure that everyone is contributing towards the road maintenance, really. Thank you for the question, Heather.
Thanks again, Heather. Sharon is next, and Sharon has a question on power bills.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
You're live on the air.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering about the power bills. My December one was $617. That's $300 more than it was last year. And February's was $872.
Wow.
I was so shocked I haven't looked up last year's yet.
Yeah. Those are big numbers, Sharon, and it's a real issue for sure. So, and right now we have Nova Scotia Power is before the Energy Board asking for another rate increase for the next 2 years. They're doing that at a time when we're already seeing significant high costs. They're doing that at a time where we're all remember the data breach, and now they kind of failed to protect our data and the response to that. So I did a very significant filing in their hearing where they're asking for the rate increase to try to articulate why I didn't think they were entitled to that rate increase. So we're pushing back. We want to protect the ratepayers. We want to push back as much as we can. But you're right. Right now we have those high bills, and they're hurting a lot of people. So I guess if I look out to the next phase of this, I would say the short term, but the medium and even the long term thing, there's a couple things that I want you to know. A couple steps that we are taking. There's lots of things we can't control, even as a premier, but there are some things we can try to address. So since in getting here with the rates we have now, we did a couple of things. If you look at your bill, there are kind of three elements to it. There's the charge for what you use, there's a base fee, and then there's a fuel adjustment mechanism. This fuel adjustment mechanism is a really tricky area because that's where whatever Nova Scotia Power uses in fuel, if their cost of oil goes up, then they just put that right through on our bills. And it's been very devastating to Nova Scotians because we're buying a lot of expensive fuels at a time when it's not ideal to be buying them. So we have to change the mix. This is why I'm talking about developing our onshore gas so we can have more natural gas on the grid, just as natural gas. So just for order of magnitude, in Nova Scotia, we pay like $12 to $15 a unit for natural gas. In other parts of Canada where they develop their own, I think out west, it's $3 or $4. So we're paying, 3, 4, 5 times as much. And by the way, it's not just households that use natural gas. Nova Scotia Power, that's actually one of their inputs too. They're almost 20% of their inputs. So we're trying to bring that that cost down. And then the other thing that is kind of a structural change that I think will help in the medium to long term is just taking, making this a system, the system operations, who determines what happens in the system, away from Nova Scotia Power and putting that in an independent group. Long way of saying the bills are high. The bills are hurting a lot of people. We know that. And we're trying to look for ways to support that. So those are big numbers you talked about, and we're trying to do what we can. Thank you for calling in tonight.
All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We have a question on the Menopause Care Center, and on the line is Amy. So Amy, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Amy.
Mr. Premier, yes. A question around the recently announced menopause care clinic. So my first question in that is, will this be available to women across the province or just kind of in the centers? And what's the timeline for it being operational? And given that there's probably going to be considerable demand for this really important care, how will you manage that demand so we don't end up with a really great form of care for women, but 2- and 3-year-long wait lists?
Thank you, Amy. This is an incredibly important topic. Women, access to women's health care, access to health care, like these are really important topics, and there's a lot of work to be done. As much as I mentioned earlier some of the progress we have made, this is an area where there's a lot of work to be done. So just the background on this is just, I guess maybe a year and a bit ago, a couple physicians came forward with this concept, and they kind of pitched this, I guess, for lack of a better word, Dr. Migas and Dr. Sean O'Hearn, and I was really impressed, and I was really impressed with how thoughtful it was, and so we said this is a good idea. So we agreed that there was something to do there, and let's do something. And we've allocated some money for the menopause clinic. It would be open to everyone. You're right. We do expect that it will be something that its own existence and more awareness will bring demand there because the need is there. So we'll certainly be in phases. I think at this time we're working closely with the physicians on this, but I think it would be safe to say that right at this stage, right now, we're trying to secure the space, the physical location, and then once we have that, then we'd start to get going on the clinical, the education, and the research components to it. But it will be a suite of healthcare professionals that would be there, doctors, nurses, physio, to make sure we can meet the needs. But family doctors are certainly telling us that they need a bit of help on how to treat menopause specifically, but other conditions as well. So we know that the demand is there. So it's coming. We're committed to it. We're making progress. I always wish things were faster, but we have to do it kind of methodically as well. And we have to, we're working closely with the physicians who urged us to do this to begin with. So it's a good thing, and it's moving the right direction, but we just need to get it across the line. I hope that helps you.
All right. Thanks very much. Next, we're going to go to Steve. Another question about power bills and cost of food. So, Steve, go ahead.
Hello there, Mr. Houston.
Hi, Steve.
How you doing today, boy?
Well, you know what? I love this. I love hearing from people and real issues from real people. I love it.
Hey, boy, listen, man. I voted for you guys this year, and my power bill is I'm not. I was listening to you about your natural gas and that, and I ain't on that. I'm just on a proper electrical grid, and our bills have been just going screaming crazy. And the other thing that's I'm sure that a lot of Nova Scotians are really concerned about is the cost of food. It's been going absolutely nuts. And I was just kind of wondering, what are your views, your takes, and or what you could possibly do for the guys that go out and work every day kind of thing and try to make ends meet. Like it's quite the it's quite the hard thing to do nowadays, right? So I was just kind of wondering what can you do to help out the common folk that actually, you know, they're out there in the trenches and stuff, and they're making it really hard. Like, it's hard to make a proper living. And it's just a real question, and I just really would like to hear some kind of reassurance or what the plan of attack would be for you on how to help us guys and girls.
Yeah, no, Steve. Look, this is you're right. I mean, I hear this, I feel this, I see this, but so I guess a couple of things. First off, government has a responsibility to deliver on the core services, right? Make sure healthcare is there for you when you need it. Make sure you have, you know, roads to drive. Make sure that we're there to support people in the times that they need to be supported. So we'll focus on those core services and do the best we can there. And we got to pay for those somehow, right? So we pay for those through taxes. But we've cut taxes. We did the most significant cut of taxes in you know, I don't know, a decade or something, a long time anyway. And, you know, when we look at the deficit that we have this year, over $1 billion, $1.2 billion, $700 million of that is because of the tax cuts. It's money that we put back in the hands of Nova Scotians. So I think that's something that we can do, that we have done. That's a tangible thing. First thing you can do is try to leave money in people's pockets so they can afford these other things that we're talking about. Second thing, on the groceries, it's a tough one for government to get in there in the middle of grocery prices. It really is. But that's not to say we can't do some things to try to make food cheaper, support our local farmers, support agriculture. We have the Nova Scotia Loyal program, which is designed to, you know, make sure we can have more of our food local, so it's fresher, so it's less transportation costs. We can maybe get it to the shelf a little cheaper, but you know, it's supporting those who produce the food is the best option we have there. And then on the power bills, first off, we're strenuously objecting. We've made our case on why they shouldn't be getting another power rate increase, and we hope that the board makes the right decision on that and agrees with us on that. But I just want to kind of close, Steve, if I could, with the natural gas thing, because I think this is an area where we can, you know, the tax cuts are pretty direct support for families. The natural gas can be as direct. And I'll tell you how, because you might not have natural gas hooked up to your house. Somebody might, and then they would definitely see a direct thing. But a lot of people use natural gas that they don't realize it. I think it's like something like half of the multi-unit apartment buildings are on natural gas. So a lot of people, maybe in Metro, in a big apartment building, they're actually on natural gas, but they might not realize it. A lot of the bigger employers in the province are on natural gas. So maybe they can, you know, if energy costs went down, maybe they can hire a few more people. Maybe they can get people, I don't know, right? But it's all part of it. But here's the thing. Here's the reason why this can impact every single Nova Scotian. Nova Scotia Power buys fuel, and then they create the electricity that they charge us for. And when you look at what they spend to buy fuel, let's just say that's, you know, all the different sources they buy from, let's just say for the sake of argument, that's 100%. Well, 20% of that is natural gas. So they use a lot of natural gas. So if we could develop our own natural gas and bring the cost of natural gas down, and then the cost of what Nova Scotia Power is using on their, what you call inputs, down, then that may be a path to get the power bills down. So you can see how it's all related. But what I would say is, I think my biggest focus right now, focus on a lot of ways to try to support people. I always wish we could do more, is if we can really get our economy going, get the Wind West project going, get the natural resources going, get our oil and gas going, and create a lot of economic activity so people have better jobs, make more money, more opportunities, but also get government revenues up, then we have more to kind of look at ways to then turn around and support people again. So it's a circle, right? We have to grow the economy to make the circle bigger and support more people. But listen, man, I hear you on it's tough to get ahead right now. People are feeling that across our entire country. And as a country, there are things we can do. And I believe the Prime Minister has taken steps to do them. And certainly in Nova Scotia, I'm pushing hard to get the economy going so we can do more. But this is why I do this, so I can hear that emotion in your voice, and it makes me just want to work a little bit harder for you, Steve. I appreciate you calling in.
Thanks again, Steve. Reminder, if you're participating by phone and you would like to ask a question to the Premier, just hit *3 and you'll be added to the queue. And Premier, our next question comes from Helen, and it's on visitor information centers.
Hi, Helen.
Good afternoon, Premier. Thanks
Hi.
for including me.
Thanks for calling in.
Okay, this is Helen from Shelburne County.
Hey, Helen.
I think that I've heard that there may be some changes in the VIC centers. Is that true?
That's true, yeah. That is true.
Okay, I'll just want to give you my blurb. I was going to write it to you, and so I can't believe that I got this call. But I just want to say for myself that I've been a member of the Nova Scotia Tourism Association, Discover Shelburne County, Southwest Nova Tourism. I've helped found historical societies and so on. And as an educator, I've always been proud of the fact that the history of Canada more or less begins in Nova Scotia. So to me, education and tourism go hand in hand. And I've worked in both sectors, and I just would like to know what your plans are for the VIC centers.
Thanks, Helen, and good to hear your voice, and thank you for your commitment to your community and in so many ways, and only some of which you've listed there. I know there are many more ways you're active in your community, so thank you for that. So look, we are across the provincial budget. We're looking at I guess cuts you would see across numerous departments of a couple percent across the board. So there is changes for sure, and changes to some of the grants and programs that people would see and participate in. So we know that's real, and we know that has a real impact on the people that are delivering those services. In some cases, the people are receiving those services, and I can see the faces of many of the people that will be impacted because I've met them in my travels as Premier or beyond. So I know the human impact of this, as I said off the top, they're not personal decisions, and they're not a reflection of the worth of people, but they have personal ramifications. So we understand the impact of the budget. So specifically, our tourism industry is really important to our province. We have record tourism numbers last year. I think tourism was up 8% last year. The national average was about 3%. So we're really proud of our tourism offerings. We're proud of the people working in tourism, and we know it's really important for our economy and for our communities, rural communities and otherwise. But the way that people travel, that's changing as well. People planning their trips online. People expect information at their fingertips on their phone and stuff. So as the world changes, we need to change a little bit as well. So some of the visitor information centers, particularly, I think the way that the process would have been that they would look at like how many how many people would have used that visitor information center and kind of made some decisions based on that. But some will be closing. Some may go to a more seasonal schedule, but there is definitely changes to the visitor information centers, and they're hard things to say, but they're hard things to do for sure. I appreciate calling in, Helen.
All right, moving along, we're going to go to Anita next, and Anita has a question on municipal services and development projects.
Hi, Anita.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my call. So I live in the Eastern Shore, and we are facing a lot of upcoming development, which it's exciting for the community and definitely needed for the province everywhere. However, in this community in the Eastern Shore, many of us use wells. And over the years, those wells' limits, quality, and consistency have changed with the growth in these communities. When my dad built the property next door, he hand dug the well, and it's only 14 feet deep. that there are people that live behind me who are drilling wells that are over 300 feet deep now. And with this upcoming developments, and I know we're not the only well-related community in the province looking at the same issues, we're concerned about our water tablet and what could happen, and whether or not feasibility studies have been done, and what the future may look like as to whether costs and timeline for municipal services following with some of these large projects that are planned for smaller communities like mine.
Thank you, Anita. Look, clean air, access to water, these are fundamental requirements for life. So we certainly take those serious. And as we look at applications, I think you're talking about housing developments in particular, but this would apply to anything. Could be natural gas, could be anything. We have to have the process and the environmental standards to make sure that we understand the ramifications, and where it's not safe, not sustainable, then we can't move forward with that. So that still exists. We still care about those things. You might not always read that in some of the stuff that you might see on Facebook or elsewhere, but I just want to assure you that there are processes for these things, and we care about these things, and we don't want you to lose your water, and we don't want we don't have those kind of negative impacts. So we look at the environmental standards. That's the first part of it. The second part of the question is just I think on infrastructure investments. So there's significant infrastructure needs in the province. Those would include roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, but of course water and sewer as well. And what we do is we work with the municipalities, and we try to understand what their objectives are, where they may be looking to expand, or where they know that they just have aging infrastructure. That maybe the sewage treatment plant needs to be replaced. It's just at the end of the life, or maybe the pipes need to be replaced. They're at the end of their life. So there's most of these things would be cost shared between the municipality, the province, and the federal government. So that's how these things get paid for generally. But also as a province, through this part of the budget, we'd have about I think maybe $15 million for critical infrastructure projects. These would be to help municipalities in the situations that you're talking about. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said like the growth, the projects are important, but what I heard you ask me is don't forget to find that balance between and the respect for those who are already there, that the growth is going to either surround or come beside them, and I hear you loud and clear on that. I appreciate you calling in.
Thanks again, Anita. Next up, Martin is on the line, Premier, and Martin has a question on healthcare.
Hi, Martin.
Hi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, buddy. Thanks for calling in tonight.
I was wondering if you're still planning on selling our healthcare system to the private sector or not.
I don't think that's anything I ever planned on doing.
Well, it's rumored.
Okay. Well,
So
what do they say about rumors?
And I was wondering, I heard a lot of talk about the power bills.
Okay.
So I'm presuming we're keeping our healthcare system as intact as we can. Is that correct?
Oh, massive investments. I can't tell if you're teasing me, Martin, or not, but massive investments in healthcare. We certainly are big believers in the system that we have in this country. Publicly funded healthcare, for sure. It's worked well for Canadians, and we've made massive investments in the public system, and we'll continue to do that. And I mean, just for order of magnitude, in the budget that was tabled in the legislature yesterday, the amount that would be allocated to healthcare is almost $7 billion. Almost $7 billion. That number is up 40% since I became premier in 2021. So that's massive investments in the public healthcare system. It's a third of our overall budget. We're believers in the system, and we are absolutely committed to doing everything possible to make sure Nova Scotians can access the care they need when they need it and where they need it. So we're making progress. There's work to be done for sure. We just heard from Amy earlier on some of the specific issues for women's health, and we'll hear from other people on other specific issues. But we're committed to the public healthcare system, and I think I hope you know that. Let me say that.
All right, more questions coming in, Premier. This one from Emmanuel, who has a question on the Nova Scotia Buy Local programs.
Hi, Emmanuel.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Premier? My question is concerning the Nova Scotia Loyal, the Buy Local program.
Sure.
Is there any other ways that it could proceed instead of just throwing money at Sobeys? Like, I don't believe that they really need this money. Like, would it be more better if you sat down with the growers and so on, made things on packaging, trying to get us to sell to distributors in other provinces, like doing, let's say, provincial trade shows for Nova Scotia growers and so on? Other than just, throwing money, they don't need the money. For Sobeys, basically is a nationwide groceries chain, and whether they're buying, they're looking to sell product from coast to coast, the same product in their stores.
Yeah.
So even now, if you go into a Sobeys store, and you go into Sobeys stores in Montreal, you're basically seeing the same. Well, in Montreal, it's IGA, but it's basically the same product, and it's not Nova Scotia product.
No, so thank you. This is a really important question, Emmanuel. So thank you for this. This is the Nova Scotia Loyal Program. So look, for as long as I can remember, government's been talking about buy local, have a little campaign, buy local. We tried to put a bit of meat on the bones on buy local. So we came up with this Nova Scotia Loyal. And the idea is you actually don't just say buy local, you actually try to encourage people to do that. So how do you encourage people to do that? You help them, direct them to and identify what is a Nova Scotia product, so it's more clear to them. Wow, this is a product Nova Scotia. Maybe I'll buy this one instead. Maybe you support the producers, the farmers. That's something that we're doing as well. So in the beginning, when we worked with we worked with the farmers markets. We had a pretty successful farmers market program, but we tried to look and say, where do people buy most of their food? Well, that's the bigger grocery stores, and Sobeys was one that said, well, we can, we could do an arrangement with you where we could advertise the Nova Scotia products, and that's what we did. So, it's been described as throwing money at them or whatever. It was part of an overall approach, and I would say that approach is evolving with time. When you learn and you know better, you do a little better too. So I think the Nova Scotia Loyal program is a good program. More and more people are talking about it. I do see stickers, I do see branding, I do see people. I do have people asking me about it. So it's getting some attention in that respect, but the vast majority of the efforts and government investment in Nova Scotia Loyal is directed right at the producers, like the vast majority. And I think as of today, there would be almost 1,500 Nova Scotia producers and retailers that are participating in the Nova Scotia Loyal program. And that means there's a sticker or some tag or some branding on it. So I think, as we continue to evolve on this program, which it will continue to evolve, it's my hope that, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I'll be in a store somewhere and I'll see some of this Nova Scotia Loyal stuff, and I'll know that it kind of caught hold. It's still catching hold now, but I do take your point of supporting, making sure we put the investment where it can get the best bang for the buck, and oftentimes that is right at the branding and right at the supporting the producers. So that's what we're trying to do. I think it would be fair to say It has evolved from the early days in the how we execute on this, but the commitment to executing on it has only gotten stronger. But it's a good program, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you raising it tonight, Emmanuel. Thank you for that.
All right, we're going to go to an email question from Scott before we go back to the phone lines. And Scott asks, does Nova Scotia have a clear plan to start producing more of our natural gas on a regular basis? Will there be enough production for investors to establish local business to service this industry and be able to rely on it long term?
Thank you, Scott. And I do think that, this has come up a couple times tonight in the cost of energy discussion. Because the cost of energy is such a significant driver of economic development. If you're going to set up a company or a plant or a factory somewhere, you got to know how much your energy is going to cost. And when you have some of the most expensive energy in the country, it make it a little harder to get the plant to locate here. So it's just it just has such a knock-on effect. We have lots of natural gas in this province. It was banned. You could not produce it. That was a decision that was made by our prior government. We've reversed that ban, and just recently we initiated a project with Dalhousie University to look at what can be done safely and sustainably around the development of our natural gas. This is a critical undertaking, because I say we have lots of natural gas. Well, what does that mean? If we were using our own natural gas instead of buying it from the United States, we're buying our natural gas through the United States right now. It's all like, that's not a great position to be in for energy security, number one. But if we were using our own, we would have enough to power ourselves for 200 years. So we wouldn't have to buy natural gas from the United States, the next year, the year after, all the way up for 200 years. We have enough. So we should develop it here. And I think as we develop it here, it does, it's one of those things that I believe would create jobs and employment opportunities for people during the development of the resource, the drilling and all that stuff, and building pipelines and stuff. But then I think it would create economic development from businesses that locate here and set up here and build plants and stuff because they have access to it. So it would create jobs during that phase. But then all those plants and factories and stuff that could be built or were built because of our access to the energy, then people could have jobs in those, for generations. So it's kind of I see it as a three-tiered economic development opportunity. And this was kind of pointed out to me by somebody who's from the Port Hawkesbury area. His wife, I think, is from Port Hawkesbury, actually, who told me the story of, on his wife's side of the family, the gentleman got a job. He was cutting down logs in the woods, and he got a job doing that. And then he heard there was going to be a pulp mill built there. A mill was going to be built. So then he had a job working on the building of the mill. And then the mill was running, and he got a job at the mill. And then his kids all worked at the mill. So I actually think that natural gas, the development of our own natural gas, is just one part of the energy opportunities that I'm really excited about. But that has that potential as well. But we need to make sure we can do it safely and sustainably, and that's what we're working on with Dow right now. So I'm excited about what's possible there. So I appreciate the question.
Thanks again, Scott. We have time for a couple more questions, and we're going to go back to the phone lines. Next is Pat, and Premier Pat has a question about family doctors.
Yes. Hello there. Nice to see that the storm has left us.
It sure is. If I never see another flake of snow, Pat, I'll be happy.
Hear the frustration and disappointment in my voice, but it's been almost 6 years since I had a family doctor. At this time, I have to drive 40 minutes one way to an emergency to see a doctor, or 20 minutes in another way, and driving by the clinic that I belonged to up until that time. It's frustrating. I usually call the clinic once a month, and also the 811 to find out how the list is coming and make sure everything's up to date. And each one gives me a different story. The 811 person says, well, we have to wait till the request comes from the doctors. Then I call the clinic, and they tell me that they have to wait for the 811, the list, to let them know that they can get more patients. My husband asked his doctor if he would take me on, and he refused, saying that he was not allowed. So there's a lot of frustration out there. I'm not the only one, I'm sure. And I tried virtual care, and that's wonderful if you have a lot of technology. I tried it at the very beginning, got booted out numerous times. I was then advised, well, go to the library. Well, if you're sick, you don't feel like leaving your house and going to the library for help in order to use it. So it's a frustration that I guess I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that frustration, Pat. We don't want that sounds like government runaround, to be honest. And I think, I hope we're a little bit past that right now. So I just want to make sure there is a process. To me, it sounds like you're following that process, but I just want to dig into that a little bit more. Like, it's calling the clinics is not the best way. It's not the best part of the process. That's kind of the disorganized way from the past. But through the 811 line, it sounds like you've called that. So, but normally they would triage you. They would take some information about your healthcare, and then they would try to get you attached. So I want to. There could be a breakdown in that process, and I apologize for that if there is. But I think what we should maybe do, Pat, is maybe get you, if you can email into, if you have access to email, premier at novascotia.ca. And otherwise we'll try to get you, or maybe your local MLA or something, but we'll make sure that I'm hearing a breakdown in the process, and I want to make sure that we try to address that. But we are making progress attaching people. There's no question about that. But 93% of the people are attached and 7 aren't, and it sounds like you're in that 7. So we need to respect that, and we need to try to work with you on that. So if you have email, Pat, just shoot me an email to premier@novascotia.ca, and then we'll try to get that through the real channels. But I'm sorry this is happening, and I appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing it with us.
Thanks again, Pat. That is all the time we have for tonight. We want to thank everybody who called in tonight, and thank you, Premier, for answering questions from Nova Scotians. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you at the next town hall.
Thanks, everyone.